Hello and welcome once again to Chats with Atheists. My name is Father Antonius and I serve in Sydney, Australia. And we are joined today once again with the Venerable Peter Bowditch, the wonderful humanist and skeptic. And today we're going to be looking at the question of the role of Christianity in the world today. The charge has been brought against Christians in general that religion is bad for the world. John Lennon, a member of the famous Beatles, who I remember from my youth, famously sang in his song, "Imagine a world in which there's no religion," saying it as though that would be a paradise. The world would be such a better place if there were no religion, because people wouldn't be arguing about their beliefs and their faith. There would be much less hatred and wars over religion. Is this really the case? Well, that's what Peter and I will be chatting about today and trying to understand. Peter, would the world be better off without religion or without Christianity specifically?
It's actually a very difficult question because I don't know whether we can actually imagine. I'm sorry, John, I used the name of the song. I don't know whether we really can actually imagine a situation like that, because we've been in this society forever. Yes. If you like trying to imagine what life would be like without motorcars, it would be totally different the way we live now. And by the way, call me a venerable. If I'd known that, I would have worn my purple T-shirt with the white collar. I don't really know whether the world would be better off without it altogether. I can see there are good things and bad things about it. I certainly know that without religion in society, it would be a totally different kind of society. Yes. Whether it would be a better one or a worse one, I'm not too sure.
Could it be argued that religions in general even give people a kind of a moral compass, give them some kind of framework or structure of morality and ethics for their life? I mean, the argument has been made, I'm not sure if it's a good argument, but the argument has been made that without such things, without such structures in our lives, we would basically follow a survival of the fittest kind of approach. We might be at each other's throats, we might be killing off the disabled and the weak. Do you think that would be the case? Or do you have a belief in the basic rationality of human beings that they wouldn't end up doing that?
I believe that we wouldn't end up like that. This is a common accusation made against atheists, that you know, without the threat of hell, and by the way, as an Anglican, we haven't had hell since 1920, that without this sort of threat of terrible things happening to you, that people would behave in some kind of bizarre and irrational manner. I like the quote from the magician Penn Jillette, who said that as an atheist, and people said, if you're an atheist, you'd be able to rape and murder as much as you like. He said, I actually do it as much as I like, which is not at all and none. I think that there is a basic human nature, and what distinguishes us from other animals. We have language, we have opposable thumbs, we also have a self-knowledge, and I think we can have an empathy with other people. The vast majority of human beings behave well simply because they're human beings. We are not sociopaths and psychopaths.
Yes.
So in my life, I don't need that feeling. Other people may do it. I would be concerned about somebody who felt that the only way their behaviour was restricted in any way was the threat of terrible things happening to them from God. That would be a very dangerous person to be near, I think.
Well, I've often come across Christians who do say that, you know, if you're an atheist, then, well, you have no morals, you have no ethics and so on. But the interesting thing is, I think that when even those very same Christians meet an actual atheist in the flesh and have some kind of meaningful interaction with them and get to know their lives, then you often have them coming back and saying, you know, there are atheists who live a better life than us Christians. And sometimes that causes people then to doubt their faith, I think. But I would say there's actually, you know, that is what we should expect as Christians, because God is not just, well, our God is not the God of only the Christians.
That's right.
He's the God of the whole universe, and that means that every human being is created in the image of God, and we would expect every human being to have a conscience, to have a sense of right and wrong, to have a sense that, you know, loving others is a very important thing to do. And I think we as Christians need to get over this idea that if people don't believe what we believe, then they must be inherently evil. Have you come across this attitude?
I certainly have. So it's actually a common thing brought up.
Yep.
But it's not borne out in reality.
No.
I went to the Global Atheist Convention in Melbourne last year. There were 4,000 people there. I didn't see any murdering, raping, stealing and carrying on. Yet there were a whole bunch of people in the place who obviously didn't believe in a God.
Yeah.
They behaved quite well towards each other. They formed orderly lines to get lunch and so forth. So there were normal common decencies being employed.
Sure.
I actually find it quite offensive that people will say, if you don't believe what I believe, then you will behave badly. It's also a classic straw man argument of saying, you are like this because of something.
Yes.
And when you say, well, I'm not like that at all, their argument falls down. I don't know, as my position as humanist, atheist and so forth, well, no, those terms are not necessarily interchangeable, but they overlap. I just don't feel the need for that. I can understand why people think, or like to think, that their religion gives them some kind of focus and meaning to their life and rules for behaviour. But I'm not sure that without it, people would behave differently. Yes, we've got uncivilised societies. Somalia is a country now without any government. People are behaving extremely badly there. That's got nothing to do with religion, and I don't think it's got to do with, even with a lot of human nature, it's to do with certain people behaving very, very badly.
Yeah.
And I don't think religion would make them behave any less bad.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the argument from the Christian point of view would be that you're quite right in the sense that simply being called a Christian doesn't necessarily mean that you would behave any worse or any better, I mean. But I think we would also say that if a person genuinely and sincerely followed Christian attitudes and beliefs and teachings, then hopefully that would make them behave better, even in a situation like Somalia.
I would hope so, yes. I think we all like to have rules to live by.
Yes.
And yes, I mean, if you are a member of an organised group, a society, if you like, which has a set of rules, which has a set of ways people to appropriately behave and behave towards others, it can be a controlling influence.
Yeah.
We've talked previously about the Crusades and Inquisition, where bad things happen. But I think that, maybe it would be. Maybe if in fact the missionaries had got into Somalia earlier,
well, yes,
they might be behaving the way they are now.
Yeah.
But I think to actually treat people, the potential behaviour based on whether they believe in God or not,
yes,
is it's rather it's a trivialisation of the whole thing. I think that, there is such a thing as human nature. We are human and we behave a certain way because we are human.
Yes.
And I think that's to do with the empathy. We can understand other people.
Yeah. Going a little bit deeper into this, as a Christian myself, well, as a human being, I have all the usual questions and doubts about the meaning of life. Why am I here? Does it all really matter in the end? And as a Christian, I find the answers to those questions through my faith. That the meaning of life is that I'm created in the image of God, that God is a God of love, therefore that love is the most important thing. My role and my purpose in life is to become a creature of love who loves God and loves other people and so on. And that gives me a kind of purpose. I'm interested to know, for the person for whom God is not a part of their life, where does the purpose come from? Where does the meaning of life come from?
This is the difficult question that's always thrown to atheists.
Yes.
Do we believe in anything at all? Or we just totally accidental? It's one of those things, it just doesn't really concern me a lot for some reason or other. I believe that we're here for a short period of time, that while we're here we should do the best we can. We should do the best we can for the people around us, for other people, for people even we're not associated with. So there's no restriction on atheists doing charity type work.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's no final reward at the end of it. So the reward is in fact living a good life.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a reward that says, if I do a good life, I'll receive a reward in another form, in a later life.
Yeah.
It's doing the best with what we've got.
Now, I'm going to agree with you here, oddly enough, because I think it's the immature Christian, I think, who does things out of fear of punishment or seeking reward, But as I understand mature Christianity, as you go beyond that,
Yes,
you know, love casts out fear. And the goal of it is, you know, I think that the true Christian doesn't even think of heaven and hell. Really what they're interested in is, I believe in goodness and in love.
Yeah.
And that's what gives meaning to my life. I just want to be that
Yeah.
kind of person. And that's not that different to what you're saying.
It's not that different at all. I believe in an innate goodness of human nature.
Yeah,
So, and so we do the best with what we've got.
yeah,
And so I think this, if you were to go through life continually looking at what am I going to do now? Am I going to be rewarded in heaven?
yeah.
Or am I going to be persecuted in hell? You'd have a very difficult life to live because you're constantly making decisions based on the wrong thing. People react instinctively.
Yeah,
It's just I think that from an atheist or a humanist point of view, we can do it based on simply it's a respect for humanity and human nature itself.
sure.
Yeah.
But the question still comes to my mind. Okay, I've sort of got a reason for subscribing to goodness. Let's just, you know, put it really simply, which is that that's the nature of God, and therefore there is a real good and a real evil. If you remove God from that picture, if you only inhabit a universe of atoms and energy, let's put it that way, isn't there the possibility that morality isn't real? That morality is just something that is useful for us? You know, we have a better society if we have it. But what would be the big deal if we didn't? You know, what would be the big deal if everybody decided to kill and rape and pillage? Does it really make any difference to the universe if there's no God?
I think it would. I think that the history of societies are that places which do have exist without rules
Yeah.
don't last. They don't survive.
But the question I'm asking is, even if they don't last and don't survive, what difference does that make to the universe? In the big scheme of things, it's
Probably not a lot.
not important.
I mean, lots of things we can say aren't important.
Yeah,
It's just that this is probably the most difficult question
it
discussion
is.
about, other than the topic of evil. This is the most difficult thing to discuss with religion versus atheism or non-belief.
Sure.
That it's why you do what you do and why you behave the way you behave. The humanist position is that human life and humanity has a value inherent in itself, and therefore you should behave in a manner which goes towards maximising, if you like, or at least maintaining a stable, good society where people behave well towards each other, people don't harm each other, and effectively it's a golden rule thing. We behave the way we would like to be treated ourselves.
So it's
I don't like being tortured,
yeah.
so I don't want to torture other people.
So it's a more sort of, I suppose, utilitarian kind of thing.
It is, yes.
You know, my life will be better if I behave in this way.
Yes.
And I'd rather my life be better, which I suppose is something we'd all agree on.
Yeah.
We'd rather
That's
be
right.
better than worse.
If I was to go through my life hating and despising everybody, being nasty to people, stealing things,
Yeah,
I don't think I'd have a happy life.
sure.
Some people would, but I wouldn't,
Yeah,
because I wouldn't like people doing that sort of thing to me.
yeah. Now, I read an interesting study recently that found that in America, people who go to church donate significantly more to charity than people who don't or have no religion and so on. What are we to make of this? Is this a powerful blow for the value of Christianity?
I'm not sure. Part of it could be that a lot of charities are Christian charities,
Yeah,
and therefore the people at their audience, if you like, are people who are already Christians.
sure.
There is an atheist charity in the United States, and I can't think of the name of it at the moment.
Yeah,
And they just announced they just raised $1 million in the last year, which I don't know how they distribute it. There have been a couple of attempts to set up atheist-type charities, which to me have been, they look like an invention. They look like we're going to promote atheism and non-belief rather than we're going to demonstrate that people with no belief can be charitable.
yeah,
It's interesting that I'm with a group called the Western Sydney Freethinkers. We donate blood
yes.
as a group, and I think we are now third highest at the local blood bank in terms of donations,
Yes.
only beaten by the military, who basically say, get in a truck, go and give blood,
Yeah.
I think the University of Western Sydney, which has got enough employees to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But
And
we're significantly ahead of 2 or 3 of the churches there.
I have to say you're beating us because we've been really slack. We used to go much more often, but I'm glad you've spurred me to go back to
set up a
that.
competition here. But
Yes.
I know that we're certainly ahead of some of the churches there that were,
Yes.
that were drafting people and bringing them down the buses. We see that, okay, effectively, free thinkers, but essentially I don't think there's anybody there who isn't an atheist of some sort.
Yeah.
We see that as contribution to society. It's part of our society is doing good things for other people.
Yeah.
Yes, there are Christian charities out there that do very good work. Whether they would do good work if they weren't Christian is maybe it's a question we can't answer.
It is interesting, though, that really, as far as I know, the vast majority of charitable organisations are based, World Vision and Oxfam and so on, are based on a Christian foundation. Whereas, as you say, that there are very few sort of non-religious charities really doing work. But maybe that's a matter of time, do you think, that
I think it's a matter of time.
As time goes on?
And also, they in a sense, have moved themselves away from that religious thing. That, and the Red Cross is probably a classic example.
The Red
Cross is in fact a secular charity.
Yeah.
It had, people were driven by their idea of going out and saying, let's do what Jesus did, let's do good things for people.
Yes.
Oxfam was obviously the same sort of thing. I don't know whether people see Oxfam as being a religious charity. Amnesty International is certainly not.
No,
In fact, one of the criticisms of that is one of the people who set it up was a communist. Well, that's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
What is relevant to me is the work that Amnesty does. I give them my $55 a year or whatever it is because I like what they do.
Yes.
And they seem to be totally they're ecumenical, if you like.
Yeah.
That they don't say we're only going to deal with certain countries. I've seen some charities that actually do apply force their religion on the people that they give the money to or they give the benefits to.
Yeah.
I think that's wrong. The major charities, they might have been based on Christianity to start off with, but they're totally indiscriminating in how they spread their money.
Yeah, and I think that is actually the Christian approach.
Yes.
I think those who try to use it, those who do charity with another goal in mind, to convert people, I think they fail often on both counts. They neither deliver good charity, and often they don't succeed in converting people. Whereas I was once, I had the privilege of going out the back of Bourke, literally, to visit Bourke and to sort of see what's going on there. And I found there were a number of evangelical groups who were basically doing that, offering a little bit of charity but mainly trying to convert people. And they got nowhere. But there was a little group of 6 Catholic nuns in the Order of Mother Teresa of India who everybody loved and everybody respected because their charity had no strings attached. They just went out and they served people. And I think that's the correct face of Christianity in charity work.
Well, I mean, suppose the example of that, my prime example was look at the Salvation Army.
Yes, yeah.
Now, okay, there are serious problems with the Salvation Army and some of the things they've said about discrimination against gay people and so forth. That they've been some absolutely outrageous things that have come out of some of the people from that. And some of my friends despise the Sallys because of that. But the fact is, the Sallys, you walk into the door and say, I'm in trouble, I'll give you money and I'll help you. Whatever help you need.
Yeah.
It was a case, it was when the Iraq War was going and Kuwait was going. The Billy Graham organisation announced that they were going to go and move into Iraq to help people. And what they were going to do was go in there and convert Muslims.
Yeah.
And it was a total abysmal failure.
Yes.
They had all the money in the world and all the good intentions, but their intention wasn't to go in there. True intention wasn't to go in there and provide aid to people who'd lost their houses or whatever because of a war. Their intention was to go in there and convert people. Yeah. They happened to pick people who belong to a religion where if you convert, you can have a death penalty. So they were doomed in various ways. But they copped a lot of criticism about that. Yeah. My view was, go in there, do the work. When it's all over, then you do your preaching.
Yes. Now, one last topic, Peter, that we've got time for is it's been said that to religiously educate children is a kind of child abuse, that children should not be indoctrinated with a particular religious belief. They should be allowed to grow up and make their own decision. I wonder what your thoughts on that are. I
agree, but I think child abuse is a bit too strong a word. I think that people should be able to make their own choices. The problem is that if you do agree with that and you say, oh, I'm going to let it happen, children still grow up in that religious environment.
Yeah.
That is, whatever your family is, whether they be Catholics or Jews or Muslims or whatever, that is the environment in which they grow up.
Yeah.
You can't really say, I'm not going to talk to you about this till you're 15.
No. I don't think any child really can grow up in a vacuum.
No.
Every parent has to deliver some sense of values and a perspective on the world, a meaning of life and purpose. I think it's almost naive, isn't it, to think that you're not going to pass those things on to your children?
I think it is. I think, however, it's reasonably able to say people shouldn't be a full member of a church to make a decision. Interesting, I was talking to Muslims at one of the mosques in Sydney, and they said they don't accept people as full members of their congregation until past puberty. That is, that until that time they're just guests of their parents. that they can't be a full participant in the activities of the mosque until they're of an age where they can make a decision to do that for themselves. Now, how many of them actually get to that age and say, I'm not coming back? I don't know, and I think it's very, very few.
And I think it's just as possible to be a member of a religion and opt out and choose to leave as it is to wait until you've grown up and then opt in and join. So I don't really see a religious education as taking away the freedom. Particularly nowadays, children are brought up in Western society to think critically about things, to analyse things and to make their own decisions about things. We don't live, back in the Dark Ages.
As an atheist, I enrolled my daughter in a Catholic school. It's
very open-minded of you, Peter.
We looked around where we were living, and it in fact offered, I think, the best environment. It was interesting, when we went to the open day, we were shown around the Catholic school by two girls wearing hijabs around their head.
Oh, wow.
Two Muslim girls who were in a Catholic school. Yes. The influence of religion on that particular school was that they had a mass once a week, I think. But essentially it was because we have rules about how people are educated here and what you can learn. There were certain things they just simply had to do in school. We saw that as being, of the various schools around us, the one that was going to provide the best environment for her to grow in without necessarily having a religious education.
Yes.
But of course, remember that it was the church that invented school education.
Yeah.
We have our Australian saint, Mary MacKillop, who had to have miracles. But in fact, if you gave away all of that, the fact that she invented and encouraged education, invented effectively the Catholic education system in Australia, she devoted her life to educating children when there was no other opportunity.
Yes.
That's a very good thing. I don't think it's child... I know why people say it's child abuse. And I actually agree in one sense that it's incorrect to describe children by a religious tag. There is no such thing as a Christian baby or a Muslim baby or a Hindu baby. In the same sense that that's like saying that child there is a Parramatta Eel supporter.
Or a communist baby or something, obviously, But I suppose what they're saying when they apply that tag is that they've been born into a Christian family. Or,
But often that's used by people to say, well, no, that's the way that person must behave. I think that when I was lucky, my parents, because the way I was brought up, we were given opportunities to look at various religious groupings. Well, I grew up in a time when everybody went to Sunday school, no matter what you were. It was also a town which had a Methodist church, a Baptist church, a Church of England church, and a Catholic church, a Plymouth Brethren church. We never spoke to them because they didn't talk to us. And so there was none. No, it wasn't just a single homogeneous society.
Well, I'm glad to be able to say that in the Coptic Church today, we've come to that sort of position where we do actually teach our kids about other religions and other forms of Christianity, and even about atheism within our Coptic schools. It's an important part of the religious education curriculum. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time to talk about, Peter. There was a few other things that we wanted to talk about, but we've run out of time, unfortunately.
There'll be more time, I think, to do it later.
I hope so. So thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Fascinating as always to talk to you. And thank you to all our viewers as well for joining us today. hoping that you'll go out and add something good to the world. And look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.